today's watch review, we're going to do something a little bit different on the channel and take a look at what some may consider a luxury watch. Today we're talking about the Tudor Black Bay Steel, or model M79730-0006. So let's get right into it. The Black Bay Steel comes in at around $3,500 or $4,000 normally after taxes. The case diameter comes in at 41 millimeters or 44.5 millimeters if we include the crown. Case thickness is 14.6 millimeters. The lug to lug is 50 millimeters. And the lug width is 22 millimeters. And the Black Bay comes in at 185 grams or 6.5 ounces. And here is how it sits on my 7.5 inch wrist. The Black Bay Steel comes with the MT5612 movement, which is an in-house movement from Tudor. It's also automatic and hacking and does come with the 3-hand dial and date window. The 5612 is also COSC certified, so accuracy is going to be better than -4 to +6 seconds a day, and it also has a 70-hour power reserve at 28,800 beats per hour. Now, what really makes this movement particularly tough is that, number one, it has something called a variable inertia balance wheel, which in a nutshell really allows the watchmaker to fine-tune the beat rate for maximum accuracy. And number two, it's got a silicone balance spring, which makes it resilient to magnetic forces and temperature change. And three, a traversing bridge that securely holds the balance assembly, making it even more secure and stable than your standard automatic movement. Case material is stainless steel, and on the top we've got a 60-click unidirectional bezel, and on the side a screw-down crown, and on the very back a screw-down closed caseback. Coming back to the top, you can see that there is a domed sapphire crystal, and right underneath that there is the applied indices, and there is lume on all of the hands and the indices, of course with the exception of the 3 o'clock indice. And underneath all of that, the website claims that the dial is a domed black dial. I don't actually understand what a domed dial means. I can't really see the domed shape, but just know that that is what it is. The lume is very good here, and exactly what I would expect given Tudor's reputation in the watch community. It glows almost like a battery-powered torch and stays readily visible throughout the entirety of the night. Even if you were feeling lazy and stayed inside the house all day, the lume still retains a charge strong enough to use in the dark. Tudor does not disclose exactly which lume they use, so I can only imagine it's some type of mixture between C1 and C3 superluminova. The dial is a style that we've seen countless times before and is really nothing special. With that being said, it's a tried and true design, so why fix something that's not broken? And while I say that the style is nothing special, I will say that it is presented in a way that is a cut above your standard dive dial. The white indices and hands provide a beautiful contrast to the almost matte black backdrop. That contrast is accentuated by the chrome outlining that gives the overall presentation a touch of bling while still being tasteful and purpose-built. The minute and second hands are of perfect length, giving the wearer a precise indication of the current time, and the snowflake hour hand has actually proven itself to be quite practical. I used to hate the blocky aesthetic, but I have now drank the Kool-Aid and belong to the supporters of the almighty snowflake. As a huge fan of classic G-Shocks, I absolutely love the red depth rating text, and the font pairs well with the spirit of the watch. For me, this dial is the perfect harmony of minimalism and practicality. This has single-handedly got to be the best bezel I have ever operated. 3 words that I would use to describe the bezel is this: zero back play. Normally, when I set the bezel, I have to move it over the click and then kind of pull it back to set it. Not the case here. As soon as the pip clicks over, it is set. There's no need to pull it back. The fact that it's also a manly 60 click bezel and not your standard sissy 120 click bezel is even better. Of course, I'm joking, but in my tasteless humor belies my true feelings that 60 click bezels are without question superior. They feel more deliberate and satisfying to me. And in this case, each click is solid while not diminishing the buttery smoothness of turning the bezel, which is only made easier by the coined edge. Normally, I prefer to have minute markers throughout the whole bezel, but in this case, I feel the absence of these 16 to 59 minute markers shows off the steel bezel the way it was supposed to be shown off. The final icing on the cake is the red highlighted pip. It's a small unnecessary touch, but for such a small thing, it makes a large impact in tying the whole watch together. Of all the things that make the Black Bay, I would say the one standout feature is the anodized aluminum crown tube. This is a feature that has always intrigued me. I love big watches, and while the Black Bay isn't particularly big by any means, the thick crown tube definitely gives it a powerful presence. Structurally, it makes the crown almost unnaturally sturdy. I've had watches with great crown stems, but this one takes the win by a landslide. Winding the spring and adjusting the time is such a smooth experience, and you'd be easily fooled into thinking that the entire crown tube is the stem. That's just how sturdy it feels. The sign crown is as beautiful as it is strong, with the classic Tudor rose engraved on top and filled with black lacquer. I feel that it was a great touch having the rose, as it gives the wearer a glimpse into the origins of this great brand. My only complaint with the crown is that the 70-hour power reserve lasts so long that I never get to use the crown to reset the time. The bracelet is well made and solid enough. We've got a brushed finish on the front and back with a polished finish along the sides. The faux rivets put an interesting twist on the design, and I think it gives the bracelet an industrial revolution aura to it. What I really like is how it gives the appearance that the outer links have steel plates riveted to the edge, reminding me of the scene from The Aviator, where Howard Hughes is examining one of his new planes and telling his men to shave off the rivets for less drag. The clasp is also very well made, but not ideal for my preferences. I prefer push-button deploying clasps, but here the Black Bay has a hook type latch that you deploy via this lip. I've had no issues with it, but it is something I would change if I were on the design team. With that being said, everything pops together beautifully from the clasp to the safety tab. The odd thing about the Black Bay is that everything operates very deliberately and yet still feels buttery smooth. It's strange in a pleasantly surprising way. Aside from that, adjusting the bracelet is an easy affair with the screw pins, and you also have 3 micro adjustable positions on the clasp. Can't really go too in depth with the Caseback. It's closed with a brushed finish and really not much else. Personally, I think that's great because it's a blank template for you to do with as you please. I'm a fan of subtle simplicity just as much as I am of overly complex art, and in this case, having a blank Caseback seems more appropriate. The brushed finish is what put me over the edge on this Black Bay. If you know me, you know I love a watch with a brushed finish, so this is pretty much the apex of that style of watch. My one gripe is the mirror finish on the sides, but I suppose it's necessary to tie it all together. It truly is a sight to behold, especially when you get it in the right natural light. I often find myself sitting back with this in my hand just to admire it. There is a give and take, however, as the surface is very soft, softer than your average budget steel watch, so hairline marks are going to populate quite quickly irregardless of how careful you are with it. Fortunately, as easy as it is to mark it up, it's just as easy to buff out with a 30-cent Scotch-Brite greenie pad. So a few minutes of tender loving care and you won't have any issues. Getting straight to the point, I love my Black Bay steel, and I think it is a fantastic watch. I will say that as a budget watch enthusiast with zero experience with luxury brands, I entered this watch purchase with very high expectations. In my life, I have had countless watches that I loved and considered to be excellent quality, which could only mean that a watch 10, 20, even 30 times the price must be on a level of epic proportions, right? Well, there's a mixture of yeses and nos to that question. Starting with the nose, this watch does not have an in-your-face apparent difference to my sub $1,000 watches. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but that's just how I see it. Just like how a fast food chain restaurant is going to provide you the same macronutrients that a Michelin-rated restaurant is going to give you, there are plenty of phenomenal budget-friendly watches that, for the most part, are going to tell you the time just as accurately and reliably as this Tudor can. And when we talk about the case or bracelet materials, for the most part, steel is steel, whether it's on a $200 San Martin or a $10,000 Rolex. However, when you get into watches, and I mean when you really get into watches, it's not the in-your-face qualities that impress you anymore. It's the subtle details that become increasingly harder to achieve the further down the horological rabbit hole you go. For example, this bezel with zero backplay may not impress you, but for someone who's operated hundreds of bezels, I can tell you that this small detail is something that a watch-obsessed person is really going to value. The crown is also one of those things that, once you've had a taste of this one, it's really hard to go back to a regular crown without critically comparing it to the new standards set by Tudor. Also, some may consider it a luxury watch, but I consider the Black Bay very much a tool watch. One might be opposed to putting a Tudor through the ringer, but with the MT5612 movement, I guarantee you it is better equipped to handle the rough and tough treatment more so than any other budget watch, and rightfully so. At that price, you better believe I want a tough watch. Another minor detail that's not in your face is the accuracy of the COSC in-house movement. Sure, the time doesn't fluctuate much day to day from any of my other watches, but over time you have this epiphany. Man, this watch is accurate as and it's only after you have that epiphany that you can truly appreciate all of the not in-your-face qualities that make this watch worth it. Of course, value and worth are all subjective, so all I can do is share my personal opinion, which is that I have no regrets buying this watch. It's one that I'm sure I'll keep forever, and one that I highly recommend if you're in the market for one. And to my fans, I'm still very much a budget watch enthusiast and an Invicta collector for life. But if you know me, you should know that no watch is safe from my collection. Anyways, that sums up this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, as I always have a blast making them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Alright, bye.